Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Today's a big day. They're all big here at PAC 14, but we've got one of the big guys in the House, our County Council Vice President, John Cannon. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been in the news way too much lately.
In the Independent, I think it is. Yeah, all right.
So please tell us, you just went through this process with the county executive, replacing Mr. Culver, who died on July 26.
Right.
Completely uncharted territory for the council. In the charter, it doesn't really say what to do. You guys came up with a process. It was an awkward process, a lot of back and forth. Tell us the story. What's the story you tell people on the street? Like, what the heck happened in this thing?
Sure. I think first and foremost, everybody should realize that it's completely unprecedented. So that made it, I think, a little bit more difficult as far as, where we were going to do, how we were going to navigate through it. Of course, we had the 3 interviews, and there was a lot of controversy over what the first selection might have been, or what the first selection was. That's still somewhat unclear, but that's okay. The real concern was when it was decided that we would go beyond the 45 days, which
right.
I really wasn't in favor of.
Charter, which was just amended recently. It used to be 30 days you had to pick the executive within, a council picks, and it was changed to 45, and you had to go beyond the 45.
And there were no provisions that actually said, well, if you go beyond the 45 days, what happens? Is there any accountability for that? So there really wasn't. When you get 2 attorneys that sit down and say, well, you can go past 45 days, it's not like a court of law where you can object or maybe that extends it for another. I mean, the judge and jury are right there at that point in time, and in the next 5 minutes, it's going to be what it is. So even though I really don't know if I agree with that, I think you can go anywhere across the country and find any case law that might suit your purpose. And if you don't have the time to rebut it, you're going to be stuck with what you have right there in that meeting. It's just my personal opinion, but
right.
it was what it was. This was the decision they made, so we lived with it. I was really concerned that, okay, I didn't like to extend the first 45, so I thought, okay, what's going to happen in the next 45?
Right.
And sure enough, when it came to the next 45, it became just as difficult. So, fortunately, in talking with John Pasota, he said he would be fine with extending his responsibilities through the 2-year term. Paul Wilbur said it would be okay to do that. That being said, I think the council came to probably the very best decision they could have under the circumstances of being completely gridlocked. And that's where we've left it, and John Pasota is doing a fantastic job for Wicomico County.
So he's going to be the acting county executive probably through 2022.
Yes, anything unforeseen, I can't imagine, yes.
Yeah. So that creates kind of an interesting situation, because when the county executive form of government was envisioned, the idea was to get away from the council perhaps being so much in charge and having someone who overlooks the entire strategic look of the county, makes decisions, deals with all the employee issues, so the council can really do its legislative function, by making laws,
right.
enacting measures. Is there a concern that having someone who's sort of accountable to the council the way they are kind of undoes the idea of the county executive?
You make a very good point, but I don't think so. This council is very anxious to work with John. John, he's his own man, and there have been instances. I talk to John on a regular basis, and he's very matter of fact. Had a meeting this morning, actually, and in that there was a particular position that he felt very strong about, and he stated that, and he has no qualms whatsoever, which I really respect. And he's also very easy to work with, doesn't get too confrontational under any circumstances, and we try not to either. So it's a very amicable relationship, and I think he is going to be very sound and solid in his decision making. And no, I don't think he feels any pressure whatsoever to do everything that the council might require or might want to do.
Back in 2006, you were on that very first council that had the county executive form of government put on them. Rick Pollitt was in charge then.
Right.
I know you were involved in the charter process too that got us the county executive. So help us understand, who is in charge? Is the county executive in charge? Is the council in charge? The way I kind of saw it is that the county executive is driving the car, but you, even when you were council president, you wanted a hand on the wheel or you wanted to read the map. What's the dynamics in that in terms of who's in charge?
Yeah, well, I look at it more as a checks and balances as opposed to who is in charge. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. Of course, the executive is supposed to call 90% of the shots. The executive is in charge of all the department heads, which, you have to respect that. You can only have one person running department heads. You can't have 8 different bosses. So, and the council in itself is allowed to some certain extent to, put forward its own legislation. So in a sense, we're independent, but at the same time, we try to work together. So again, it's a checks and balances for both of us. And you have to have, of course, a majority of council members to work with anything. I think when we worked with Rick Pollitt, I thought it was a very good 4 years for me in particular in trying to get things done. Party preference doesn't usually play into much. Ideologies don't play much in local politics, I don't think.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a good job of keeping the kind of the party politics out of the stuff on the council.
Right.
I mean, it's very rare that the 4 Republicans vote one way and the 3 Democrats vote the other. Even in the county executive process, one of the Democrats voted against a Republican candidate.
Right. I think you'll see mostly when you're dealing with local issues, whether it's public safety, whether it's education, whether it's the infrastructure, roads and wastewater and stormwater management, those issues don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. You just get the job done.
Right. When you're out in public, and I know you're out about a lot, you get around a lot, what are people telling you about all this stuff? Are they asking you a lot of questions? Do they understand? Are they confused? Or do they give you a hard time?
I think similar to what you had shared, there is some concerns as to how it became so difficult. And it doesn't take, I think, too much to explain. I think the real positive thing here is that we're finally moving forward here, and we're going to have a great couple of years here ahead of us now. We're managing to put a lot of things back together. We have a new finance director, which is great. I believe what the council is going to do, I'm pretty certain that the council is going to go ahead and look at bringing Paul Wilbur back in. And
really? Okay, yeah. So that would be news. He's making news. The county attorney that you all essentially fired could stay on?
Could possibly come on, yeah, yes, and I think that would be a good thing. I think what we really want to focus on, we had very good reasons for everything that was done in the past few years. We had very good reasons for it. It wasn't personal. It was a matter of just trying to be as efficient as possible as a county. And I think what we're looking at now is just trying to put a lot of that behind us and look at the most positive means to go forward. We're moving ahead with the capital improvement programs.
Right.
That's because we have a finance director now. We're going to have, I think, a county attorney in place, and that can help us move forward with the real work that needs to be done, with whether it's Beaver Run, whether it's Mordella, whether it's the Sheriff's Department, whether it's the airport. We have a lot of projects that we're looking at, and I think it's going to be, we're already on the way. We already had a public hearing and on a legislative bill to move that forward.
Let's talk about them in detail a little bit, because the whole the funding for capital was kind of in jeopardy there for a while because of the conflicts and who's going to go to New York and borrow the money and problems with the economy and all that. But Beaver Run's in the pipeline. You guys are funding that every year, so that seems to be going okay.
Right.
Except there's still too many steps in that process. The issue that seemed to be in conflict was the Mordella situation,
right,
where there were 3 options for replacing the Mordella school. The most preferred option was to build a new school, but there was no money for it. So tell us where that stands now.
Well, in what we just looked at last week, we are putting forward $2 million for renovations and possibly rebuilding. The big question mark there isn't so much as far as what we want to do, because I think the majority of the council is looking forward to seeing Mordella done, the whole project. What we're really looking at across the board is how the COVID is going to affect us, how the revenues stream is going to be coming in over the next few years. And, I said this months ago when Dr. Hanlon was before the council. I said, look, we want to do all these projects, but we really have to know in the long run whether it's sustainable over the next 5 years to put these type of monies in there, whether we're going to have that. We have a good amount of reserves in Wycomico County, which is great, but you don't want to drain your reserves completely. We don't know what the state's restrictions might be. They could cut back on a lot, though they're saying that their revenues are looking better. So overall, want to move that forward. We just want to really make sure all these projects are sustainable in the long run.
And then the airport as an economic jewel, you guys
Sure.
have been very committed to putting money into the airport to making it better.
Right. The airport, it is a jewel. It really is. And it's so important for economic development. We have sustained a lot of deferred maintenance at the airport, so that when they're coming to us and they're asking for a lot of money, it's not to do with their operational budget. It's to do, well, it is in a certain extent, but it's strictly for capital expenses.
Sure.
A lot of capital expenses, and it's astronomical because it's gotten. We're trying to catch up with like 20 years of deferred maintenance, and in addition, we have a new director.
Yeah, the leadership thing there, but it seems like that's pretty good.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great. Tony's doing a great job, and Chris Davidson.
Tony Rudy's the new airport director,
right?
Yeah.
And Chris Davidson has taken over as assistant,
right?
And he's completely on board,
right?
So we're moving forward at the same time that we're trying to catch up. So it's money for what's old and money for what's new.
Right.
Fortunately, we got about $18 million from the federal government in CARES funding. That's going to go a long way in helping. We've moved forward with a water line. That October 25th, I believe, is when we're going to
at the groundbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big difference. They've got the drone building up, and that is so much on the forefront of new aerospace. It's fantastic.
Right. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, one of the really tense moments recently. Tense? It wasn't tense. It was just like more like jaw-dropping. In a county council meeting, they came in to talk about the sheriff's building, which is in the public safety building, which is in the budget. And, and you were actually the guy on this who kind of ferreted it out. I was sitting around thinking $7, $8, $10, $11 million is what this thing was going to cost.
Right.
And then you did the math right there at the table, kind of in your head is what I saw. We haven't talked about this, and it was going to be more like $30 million.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the new number's about 28.
Yeah.
The original number was 16. We had already committed the $5 million, and we had another 10 to 11 million that was in the CIP as planning process to continue forward with it. It was for the Sheriff's Department specifically, not so much for the Sheriff's Department and Emergency Services. They're proposing that this be a combination of Sheriff's Department and Emergency Services. And there were many other issues that came to light that were included as additional costs. I haven't clearly vetted it enough. I really want to meet with more closely with the members of the Sheriff's Department who are involved in that process. We're being told that there was a really huge miscommunication, whereas they were dealing with the prior administration on all of these meetings, and they were under the impression that the prior administration had been meeting with the council. Not so. And so it did come to us as a complete shock when a 16 million project all of a sudden became 28. Now, at that time, I think it was important to point that out and to point out what I thought was a really irregular process, where I think that everyone in play had to have known what the number was, and still though came up with a project almost twice as much. And I don't say the Sheriff's Department, because they were following the lead that they thought that, that the administration was okay with. But in retrospect, we still want to look at that. We still want to make sure that, as far as public safety is concerned, that we don't short sheet anything.
Right.
Because that could come back to haunt you. You want to make sure that if you need 3-inch glass or 5-inch glass, whatever it might be, I don't even know if they make 5-inch glass.
Right.
But you want to make sure that if whatever glass structures they have are adequate, you recognize the fact that, for concrete, the prices have almost, I guess, maybe tripled.
Right.
And there are a lot of different issues to that extent. In the long term, over the last 6 to 8 months, it could very well be that they've sort of more carefully evaluated it, and they underestimated it before. So, I'm not discounting the 28 million at all. I just want to make sure that we do our homework, and we cross all our T's and dot our I's, and make sure that it is the best public safety building. If it's going to be new, you really want it to be the best. You want it to be, what the public needs.
Right.
And at the same time, you want to make sure you've gone through the most efficient process as far as costs are concerned.
Yeah, the most positive thing in that whole interaction was that you didn't have an attitude of a gotcha, like what the heck are you guys doing here? Like, how dare you? It wasn't like that. It was like, okay, we got a problem here. We didn't know this. How are we going to fix it? So it was more of a jaw-dropping moment than a gotcha moment.
Right.
And that seemed really productive. And also, I mean, the architects were there. They were able to articulate why that building is different than most buildings, things that you don't think about. Like
Sure.
where they are now, it's basically like an old farm building.
Right. Right.
You know, it's not really built for what it's used for. And if they're going to do it, they want to do it right.
Heck, I remember in 2006, which maybe I've been, but I talked to Hunter Nelms at the time, who was a sheriff.
Yeah.
And one of the first tours I did was in the sheriff's department. And even back then, they were like, "Oh, this isn't working."
Right.
Because you got to do something, John. This place is just—it's in bad shape.
They had buckets all over the place.
Yeah, there was water coming in
yeah.
everywhere, and that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is hard to believe. It seems like last week to me, 2006, but that's a long time ago.
I know.
Yeah. So going forward, you feel good with Mr. Posota.
Right.
You've got your finance director. There's still some positions out there that need to be hired. It kind of came up. There was an over expense on the new dam, Morris Mill Dam, and still don't have a public works director. So can you help me with where things are with hiring? I know that's not the council's job, but
Right.
just tell us what you might know about what's going on with that.
Well, I think as you know, we approved Pam Olin as the new finance director. She's going to be absolutely fantastic.
She was with the city and then with the county recs and parks, and
Yep.
now she's with the, okay.
Yeah, she's very good.
Yeah.
She knows her numbers, and she also knows how government works with numbers,
Right.
because it's a little bit different sometimes. But she understands that. She has a very good grasp also on how the numbers play out with the charter as to when transfers should or shouldn't be made. That was a very huge issue not too long ago, and I really appreciate her perspective on that. So she's going to be very good. I think she's a good manager as well as a numbers person. We're also looking at trying to make an appointment for the emergency services deputy director.
The deputy, okay.
Right, trying to look at that. And we are in the process of trying to find a new public works director. That's a very interesting niche. You know, you want someone that is an engineer and understands those processes. But I think it'll be good. Mr. Posota is working right now as far as trying to fill that position.
How are you feeling about politics overall in the county? The relationship with the city, you know, city versus county, we see those tensions all the time. What's going on with all that stuff?
Well, you know, there's been a bit of a delay here with the fact that the county's just been trying to get its house in order.
Shore up its leadership.
Sure, and I think we've done that. And now I guess it's the time to reevaluate where we are with the city. Of course, you know, the mayor is not in the country. And Julie is doing a very good job for Jake. So I don't think that we've really come to that situation, whereas there's a lot of, as you say, cooperation needed. It's just business as usual right now. And the city of Salisbury isn't the only. I mean, you have all the other municipalities and towns in Wicomico County that we work with. So again, it wasn't that long ago we got our own house in order. And I think we're just really looking forward to trying to make things happen from here on out, dealing with COVID issues and whatever needs there might be for everyone.
Now, you mentioned the COVID issues, and it's interesting because you're a guy who has some rentals. That's your business is rentals. There's some tension between renters not being able to pay because of the lack of employment. Governor just yesterday announced, I think, $10 million to help with rental issues across the state.
Sure.
What's the situation out there with renters, people who are, you know, at the lowest end of the you know, economic scale, at the most risk? How are you managing all that stuff as a Salisbury businessman?
It's actually, I think, a lot better than I had anticipated it would be. I have to give a lot of credit to the state for very clearly trying to define the differences between what are just delinquent tenants and habitually delinquent tenants and those tenants who are truly impacted by the COVID-19. And that's a very, very important distinction. And not only that, but we've been very lucky to have some great groups in the county and in the city that have been handling the funds that have been distributed to the local level. Laurie Carter with Planning and Zoning has done an absolute excellent job in distributing funds through Habitat for Humanity and the local management board, using Cheryl with Meadows with Salisbury Neighborhood Housing.
It's great that they've gotten involved as they have, yeah.
And they've done it so well.
Yeah.
They've coordinated, you know, among each other so well.
Because they know what they're doing, so that's good, yeah.
Yeah, and so at one point in time, you could only get the funds for city residents, and then you could only get the funds for county residents, and things went back and forth, but the communication was wide open. And I never found that there was any shortness of communication between those parties involved.
As a businessman, are you happy with how the governor has sort of managed things with the COVID, or are there more possibilities for doing things differently going forward?
I think he's done a relatively good job. I think he came up a little late in making his decision about education.
Yeah,
It's like the schools had already decided.
Yeah,
this still has to be done ahead of time.
Yeah,
And then I guess maybe a week or two before everything was open, he goes, "Oh, here's what you want to do."
yeah,
Would have been nice to have had that leadership a little bit earlier. So, but I think overall, I think he certainly could have opened up earlier. I think the restaurants took a terrible beating, and that was sad. But again, you don't come into you never understand exactly what's behind the scenes. You open up everything, and you've seen it on a national level. As soon as one issue hits the fan, all of a sudden it's blown out of proportion 10, 20-fold.
right.
I think that's really a lot of the main reason why the Board of Education did what they did. I believe they felt not so much that if they reopened all the schools that everyone would get COVID.
Right.
That was not the issue. The issue was that if they reopened all the schools and sent all the children into the classrooms and one case came up,
Right.
one case, you couldn't address the one case at all. No, the
Right.
way it is in this environment now, you'd have to shut everything down.
Right.
And you'd have to send all the kids back home. And I can understand why they had those reservations. So, what the superintendent did, she just said, look, not wanting to, but feeling that was the only option, let them stay home for now. And
Right.
let's just try to get through this so that we don't have to send them to school and then yank them all back. I think it's worked fairly well with the computers and the getting the laptops out and the hotspots out. The other one downside I think that's unfortunate is the extracurricular activities, which we got a lot of feedback as a council on that,
Right.
which is really a shame. I remember one of the individuals that came before the council was wrestling for the state, and I can relate to that. I used to do that when I was in high school, and he said, "Hey, this is my year."
Yeah.
I think he was second last year in the state.
Yeah.
And he goes, "This is my year. I know what's in the playing field. I know I can do this."
Right.
And all of a sudden, that's been taken away. That's it's a once in a lifetime opportunity
For scholarships and
scholarships.
I mean,
Yeah,
gosh,
that's true.
Yeah, everyone's gonna have an asterisk next to their name forever.
Yes, yeah. So you can see that. And I don't know how they can adjust for that. I don't know how they maybe would have adjusted for that, but there have been a lot of downsides, as we know, with COVID throughout the country, and we're facing those same similar circumstances in Wycomico County. But I do think that, for the most part, whether it's the county council, whether it's the current executive, whether it's Board of Education, whether it's our health department that's done absolutely excellent job with
Right.
that, or our emergency services, or PRMC, the Chamber of Commerce, Greater Salisbury Community,
Title Health.
Community,
Title Health.
Title Health. What did I say?
They'll call me if
Title
we
Health.
don't correct it. Yeah.
Right, the collaboration that's happened, and together with the city, I have to give Mayor Day credit to that too. Everybody got on board immediately, and we were having these Zoom meetings every week
Yeah.
to make sure that everyone was coordinating all the efforts. And I think we really did a great job in the county and in the municipalities.
You talk about education, and of course they pay me to watch people, so I get paid to watch you, basically. And I have to say, you've really progressed in terms of your support for public education. You still ask a lot of hard questions, you hold them
Right.
accountable, but you seem more open-minded about why having a really great education system is more important than ever.
I think it's just required to be more outspoken to a certain degree, because things have begun to change a little bit.
Yeah.
When Dr. Hanlon proposed the pre-K initiative, at first I was not in favor of that. I was, in my impression, pre-K meant, bringing them to school in diapers and all that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite that way. The other thing was, I actually visited the
Right.
schools, and I watched these young children, and to watch them interact with each other. The great eye opener for me was, you could see that it wasn't only an educational purpose, but it was socially. They were learning better social skills as well, and in emotional skills. I think the earlier you can get the children in and mix with everyone, and they all say, "Wow, this is a pretty great world we're in. I'm having a great time out here like this." Those influences, I think, go a long way in the long term. So, yeah, I think that pre-K is a great idea. I use the
Rising tide lifts all boats.
Rising tide lifts all boats. I knew you had
Sorry.
it. You're the literature guy.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe I may have had some reservations initially about that. I think it's probably one of the great things that we've done, together with the entire 2020 program and 2021 program that the superintendent put forward. We saw tangible goals.
Right, exactly. We needed that.
Which helped.
Yeah.
Yes. Before, I think, there were good efforts being made, but it was nowhere near, I think, laid out in the structure that we've been able to see now. And you like to see that. It helps you feel more comfortable that there will be greater accountability.
Yeah, and as goals change, I mean, she can adjust the goals. I mean,
exactly.
It makes sense, but there's more of a checklist sort of thing to it, and I think it's helpful for everyone in terms of communication.
Right, right.
You cited the pressures of your business, your expanded business, when you went from being council president down to vice president. Then there were a bunch of us who thought you should be the next county executive. Again, kind of
right.
the business stuff got in the way.
Sure.
But just watching the meetings, I can tell that you miss being council president. Do you ever want to be council president again, or what might be your future in terms of leadership there?
I'm not sure what you might say led you to believe that from watching the meetings, but
because I'm paid to watch you.
Yeah. I just I think it's a little premature to go down that path right now. We've got a little more time to figure that out.
Do you miss it and ever want it back?
Well, I enjoy what I do. It was the one thing that I felt that I wanted to do at the time, was to back off a little bit and get everything in order. We were changing with new computer programs at my office personally, and had brought on quite a bit of new investments. So it was certainly time needed, very very much so. But I always find it very interesting. I do what I do because I really like it, and that includes county work. I just very much enjoy it. It's very rewarding for me. So as much as I can do, I don't shy away from any of those responsibilities.
How can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out and touch you and give you their peace of mind?
Well, it's my cell phone. You can either reach me with the county email, which is online, or my personal cell phone is online also with the county. I don't have two phones. I don't want to carry two phones. So anything I do with personal business and county business, if you call me, leave a message, because unfortunately I don't pick up if I don't recognize a phone number anymore, because there's too many solicitors.
That's why you never take my calls. That makes sense.
That's just called a block.
No, he's very responsive. He's very good, and very good at sort of telegraphing what's going on in the county. It helps me understand what the issues are that I need to watch out for as we go forward. So that's very helpful, and I'm sure you're that way with constituents as well.
Oh, well, many times I read the Salisbury Independent to find out what's going on in the county, I have to tell you.
That could be good or that could be bad.
Yeah.
Well, John Cannon, thanks for being in here today. I know it's been a fun summer for you, fun, not fun, whatever, and just thanks for all you do, and thanks for your service, and thanks for coming in.
Great, enjoyed it, thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, another edition of 101, right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.